the evolution of the electric mobility, the regulatory environment in India, many would say it's still taken a lot of time. Even volumes remain.
I'm Indian. I've lived and worked all my life there. When you say something takes time, you just say
it's just natural.
Part of the territory.
And when it turns
around, things happen.
You'll have the first mover. I mean, you'll be present with a.
I think there's huge opportunity for everybody. First mover, second mover, 10th mover. It's just going. There's so much penetration left. 1% of the market in the UK, a negligible amount in India. So think of the upside, and think of it what happens when shared mobility players like Uber and Ola start using this. One of the biggest buyer of our cars today is a company called Lithium in Bangalore, which is an electric mobility provider. So solutions, mobility solution providers are going to be the ones who will catalyze the change.
Power Minister said by 2030 he wants, the electric mobility to be the primary, the preeminent mode of transportation. We are in 2016. We are still 14 years away. Is that achievable, you feel?
Yeah, when he said that, I hope you heard us cheering in the background,
yes.
Because we were. And his ministry has been insatiable in asking for data, looking at the information available on that transition. He is now convinced that this is doable. And he is working with international agencies to help him achieve that goal. So this is not simply a soundbite that he was giving. I truly believe that. We've discussed it with Minister Goyal. And frankly, what's better is that Minister Gadkari is also aligned to this. So when you have two ministers, both in power and transport, and then the environment minister, so you have this Trimurti that is committed to this goal.
Right.
I think it will happen.
Right. The last time you and I spoke, Mr. Mahindra, you were very cautious about the pace of, while the government was initiating reforms, but you were a little cautious in terms of its effects on ground. We've just started the new financial year, and there's been some good news. It's been good normal monsoons, has been predicted after 2 years of drought. CPI has come down under 5%. Are you a little more sanguine about the prospects of FY17 as you were 3 months ago when we last spoke?
I have a much more positive outlook than when we met last. That's to be frank. And I told you that I was always optimistic. I felt it, but I was wrong about when the tipping point would come in India. I think things are finally building off to that mythical takeoff point that never used to come. Let's be honest, I've also recently posted on social media that we should not get euphoric about the monsoon forecast. Climate change has rendered all monsoon forecasts somewhat capricious. But if we are fortunate enough to get a normal monsoon, I think that combined with the effect of all the other policies that this government has done in the last 2 years, you could see a level of growth that will surprise us all on the positive side.
It's good to know, Mr. Mahindra, but for the auto industry, the year has once again started off on an uncertain note because the diesel ban still continues. And in such a situation, I mean, you are at the frontier. You are sort of, in a sense, spearheading that debate because you're trying to convince the rest of the world that, diesel is not as polluting as you make it out to be, and we are investing. We will hit BS6 in another 4 to 5 years' time. But then, is that like an overhang which is pulling the industry back?
You're asking me generic questions about the industry. So I'm answering you generically on behalf of the auto industry. I don't want to answer with a vested interest of Mahindra. I've said before, and I'm on record, that I respect the judiciary of this country. They have kept democracy alive. It doesn't mean that we always agree with their decisions. Sometimes when you want to bring change, some decisions that come in are perhaps are a little egregious, if you will. They don't always take into account the hard facts and so on. But as far as I'm concerned, that's the law of the land. We will obey it. And we will do so happily. Because we think the push towards climate-friendly vehicles is a good one. And we are never going to line up against that. And as you've seen, our answer will always be to deliver products which will meet the regulations and in fact go beyond them. That's our stand. So I refuse to be intimidated or to be depressed. I'd rather have an organization that is nimble and reactive enough to respond to the changes that the people want and which I hope are embodied in the decisions.
But are your CEOs telling you that they have to review the investments owing to this diesel overhang?
We will never stop investing. The question is what you invest in. It's as simple as that. You just change tack and you say this is the direction and this is what we're going to do. We weren't waiting for the government to mandate electric vehicles before we bought Reva, as you know. So I just hope, as far as I'm concerned, my only advice to my colleagues will be, let's not wait until somebody pushes us in a direction, let's anticipate them and be ready for them.
So your entry into UK also coincides with Tata Steel wanting to exit. Has that in any way, in your interactions here with people in London, has that in any way impacted brand India in terms of,
No,
because the unions are up in arms, it's become a big political issue now.
You know, it's very unfortunate, obviously, but to be honest, I think the public, I just got here yesterday, but my general sense is that it's been handled very well by Tatas, and that everybody recognizes that they made a great deal of effort and that there are some externalities which are causing this. I don't think there's anyone here who's accusing Tata of being, of not living up to promises. So I think these are just the vicissitudes of business. Some businesses work out. Some businesses, unfortunately, are threatened by external development. So I don't think this is going to have any long-term impact on brand India at all.
All right. Last two questions then, Mr. Mahindra, before we wrap up this interview. You know, you like talking about this, and a lot of us acknowledge the fact that how rapidly the world is changing, the kind of role technology is playing. Only time will tell the impact 3D printing, for instance, is going to have. So in that sense, the view is that even regulations will have to keep a pace with these, with these changing times. So while you also said at the start of the interview that reforms take time, anything takes time. But in India, the impression is that even the very obvious takes a lot of time. To give you the example of the GST, a bill that was again championed by the previous government, but it seems now it's again run into rough weather. Is there a feeling somewhere that politics is perhaps failing businesses in India?
Look, this question, as you know, has been asked since the beginning of the regime changeover. Ironically, despite being a regime in which which has been led by a master communicator, Prime Minister Modi, I believe they've done a poor job of communicating their many successes. There are many small successes which are all adding up to give us the recovery that we are anticipating. I wish there was somebody who could help them publicize what they have done in smaller areas which are adding up to a major, lots of drops of water in this bucket. Let's take crop insurance. Now we're looking at farmers and their plight. Why isn't anyone looking at the fact that crop insurance could make a tremendous difference to the well-being of these farmers? Or if you look at the way in which the government has handled public savings rates being brought down. It was very clear if you talk to any bankers, and I'm sure you did, that it was not simply the RBI that could help them bring rates down, that public savings rates had to be brought down, and that was a politically difficult bullet to bite. They did that, and they did it very well, and after one day of objections, they have created a mechanism which will allow the calibration of rates in a much more dynamic manner. That's going to lead to a much more vigorous and reactive interest rate environment. Why aren't these things being talked about? Or the fact that there is much greater transparency at the top for companies like ours.
Yes.
So
I've
said that on record. Right. I've not gone to Delhi. Right. I don't have to go to Delhi anymore. And so to my thinking, things have changed dramatically. Some big moves have still to be done. They will come. But this government needs to do a better job of publicizing the many things it has done right.
All right. My final question then to you, Mr. Mahindra. I'm taking forward the conversation we last time had, and you said that how public trust in businesses is at a low, and that was perhaps a trigger for Mahindra Rise also as a campaign and as a vision for your group, especially at a time when you see large corporate houses defaulting on their loans, and of course there's one person who's been pretty much absconding right now. Does that concern you, because you're looked upon as the conscious keeper of India Inc., Mr. Mahindra, and in that sense, does that worry you? I mean, that incidents like this is further going to sully the image of India Inc., and there'll be negative externalities.
You've asked me this question by putting me on the spot and putting me on some pedestal I don't really want to belong to.
But many of your Twitter followers, they like the fact the way you engage with them. So it's
look, a lot of when you talk about defaulters, as you know, the governor of the Reserve Bank himself has made a very clear statement that not all defaulters are willful. You have to remember, Ronojoy, that one of the biggest problems or threats to entrepreneurship in India is that there is a very severe cost of failure here. So we need that bankruptcy law, which the finance minister is promising. I would like to urge him to bring it into play much quicker. We've got to realize that entrepreneurs Not all of them succeed. If you look at them, media focuses on the winners. There are many losers out there. And we should not in any way ostracize the losers. So if somebody has legitimately taken a risk, somebody has lost for external reasons or even due to bad implementation, that's fine. That's what business is. You need winners and losers. There is no economy in which you're going to get only winners. So my only fear about the current environment is that if you begin to condemn and vilify all losers in business, you're once again going to get back to that old mentality, meri beti isse shaadi nahi kar sakti hai businessman se because he might fail. We had come to a point where people have begun to value risk-taking. I just hope that this environment does not in any way discourage risk-taking, because there are legitimate business people who will go into a project, may not succeed, and we must not condemn them.
Thank you for that conversation, Mr. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.